Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 192, Digital Imaging / Photoshop, or Photoshop / Digital Imaging for the fall semester of 2021. Where we left off with lesson 9 in advanced compositing techniques is we used Bridge, a feature in Bridge and the tools to be able to open multiple files in open separate files into one file, but on different layers in order to create our composite Frankenstein character. We also colorized his hands using a colorization technique. I switched to from a normal to a color mode, and that allowed me to color his hands and at the same time keep all of the details of the wrinkles and the creases in his hands and that sort of thing. At the very end, I collapsed the layers together so that we could include it in this finished file, but at the same time, keep all the layers intact in his original file. So if we wanted to make changes to it at a later date, we could do so. The next two things that we're going to do today, as I said, that shouldn't take too long, involve the following. We want to add here's another headstone we want to add. And they want us to dress it up a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some layer effects to it, some filters to it that are all, most of which happen to be permanent. They're not, they are destructive, not non-destructive. So there might be different ways that I would prefer to work with it, but we'll follow the lesson in the book pretty closely. And then I will show you how I might want to change it. First thing that I'd want to do is I'd want to make a copy of the layer just for the heck of it, in case I want to go back to the original. And I use up all of my undos in order to do that. So what they want us to do first, and you need to remember to add this kind of cloud effect to it that we need to make sure that we have our default foreground and background here. Okay, so if you have anything else but black in the foreground or white in the background, you need to click here to make that change. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to filter and we're going to go to render. And what I want to select is difference clouds. And it applies an interesting effect. Okay, that simple. But you'll notice when we look at layers, anytime you use these filters, they are a permanent change. There is a workaround of that I can show you that we'll probably have enough time today to do that. So, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and look at some other filters that they want us to add. One filter that they want us to add is a blur filter. We already used in lesson 5. So I'm going to go to filter and I'm going to go to blur gallery, and they want us to add the iris blur here. So let's go to blur gallery, iris blur. So we focus mostly on the RIP and all the, rest in peace, and anything outside of that, we want to be that area we want to be blurred. So again, if I select that, I come out here, if I want to rotate it a little bit, I can rotate this. There we go, like so. If I'm happy with it, that's fine. This is something that does not have to be exact. And I can go ahead and I can click the OK button at the top here, and I'm good. But again, what happens when you do that, anytime, as I said, anytime you use anything under the filter menu, generally these are permanent changes. Okay, unless we'll do later is we go up into history and we go back. But when you do that, they are, either they're there or they're gone. There's no in between. So I'm going to show you a slightly different way in a few minutes. So the next thing that they want us to do here is we're going to use the color mixer. So the color mixer is an adjustment layer that we can use that will be editable. It is non-destructive. So it's actually the channel mixer. This is the one that I want. And what we're going to do is make sure by default, it's the red channel that's affected. And we're working on RGB. So we have 3 channels, red, green, blue. We want the green channel to be affected. And if I do that and I go ahead and let's see, I want to affect the green, and instead of 100, I'm going to pull it back to 37. And how do I know? Because the book is telling me to do that. And it's something that you would want to play with. It's not something that's obvious. And then we're going to affect the blue channel, and instead of 0, we're going to make it 108. And when we do so, you'll notice that we're changing up and turning a black and white image into one that's sort of a duotone. We have black and green. So that's another effect that we can apply to it. So that is the channel mixer. The next thing that we can do is we can add something that I forgot to do that we should have done, and that's also one of the adjustment layers, is that we can add brightness contrast. So let's take the brightness and let's go ahead and crank that up a bit. Okay. They want us to crank it all the way up to, I think, 90 or something like that. Okay. Now, these 2 effects that I've added, let me move this one below and see if it affects it at all. And notice that when you change the orientation of the layers of these effects, that they change a little bit. Notice that? Very subtle, but the order that you place them could be important for your own projects. This one is just all experimentation. So one of the things, the last thing that they want us to do on here is after I use the channel mixer is that we can always go back in history. And we can go back by using the history panel here. And what they want us to do is go all the way back to the blur gallery, and then maybe even go back even further to different difference with the clouds. I'm going to leave the blur gallery here and leave it alone. One of the last things that they want us to use is, again, an effect that is under filters. And I couldn't today, I played with it for quite a while. I couldn't get it to work anymore. Again, it's under filter, it's under render, and it is lighting effects. Now this is like, shining a light on this. And obviously the light illuminates certain areas and there's a fall off and makes others, hides other areas, but it's not working. It just goes to white. And I don't know why. I have preview turned on, and even when I have preview turned off, that doesn't help you. You need preview turned on to see what the effects are. They want us to switch from the default settings here of a point light, and under the presets in the upper left-hand corner, they want us to use the flashlight. And there are some presets here. So we want to, colorize and change the exposure a little bit. They want us to change the color of the light itself and make this sort of a bluish light over here. And we can go ahead and click OK. And then the ambient light, they want us to crank that up. And when we're done, it's not doing anything. It just leaves it white. I don't understand. It's been the same for any number of iterations of Photoshop. And for whatever reason, on my version right now, or on my platform, it is not working. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. Okay. But if I were to add anything else to this, if I were to apply another, see that these versions of this image are grayed out down here on the history. If I go ahead and I add something else, they will permanently disappear. So for example, if I go back to an adjustment, and let's go back and let's add a levels, and you can see that all of those went away. When you go back in history, now there are other things that you can do to save different versions of that. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to leave that. Okay. And I'm going to turn this layer off. I'm going to turn this layer off, and I'm going to turn the original one back on that I had. Now, if you want a way of working around filters, which are destructive, and work in a non-destructive way, is to change this from a bitmap image to not a vector, but a smart object. So to do that, you go to layer, and we go to smart objects, and we say that we want to convert this to a smart object. Now, not everything that you can't necessarily do everything with a smart object, but we can do some of the things that we're planning, especially the ones that are under the filter menu. And then we can duplicate it, and we can rasterize it. And if we need to go back and edit it for any reason, we can. So again, we're adding more layers, but it will enable us to go backwards if we need to, and work and re-edit or edit it at our discretion. So you'll notice that the change in the icon here, this is how indicating that it is a smart object. So now when I go back and I go to filter, and I'll just do maybe one of these or two, we'll see. I'm going to go to, which one did I use? I used under render, I used clouds difference. So let's do that again. And you'll notice that when it is a smart object, that just as we like having an adjustment layer, we have smart filters here. So I can turn it off, turn it back on. I can delete it. And if I want, I can double click on it and bring up the settings. Come on. Well, I can't bring it back up, but I can. I don't know why. Let's go ahead and click on it. Okay. So I have the smart filter, and I can, wait a minute. There we go. There we go. We can bring it up again, and we can make changes to it. So there we have that. So let's go ahead and let's also add in there the other filter that we were working with, which was under the blur gallery. And let's add the iris blur on top of that. And again, that will show up similar to what we had before. That it will now be editable because I've applied it to a smart object. So I'll change this a little bit, move this up a little bit, close this up a little bit, move it like so. To focus on the RIP, the RIP, and go ahead and click OK. And as soon as I do, notice that on the smart object layer that the blur gallery has been added. Now, if I want to add some of my adjustment layers, I may not be able to do that. So let's try to do that, because I forget from time to time which ones we can and can't apply, but we can always take this and we can rasterize it. But before we do, because it will flatten it and these will become permanent, you would want to make a copy of this layer. So let's try again. Let's try the channel mixer and see if it will work. So again, I'm going to affect the green. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull back on the green here. Yeah, and let's see what we have. Because this is an adjustment, layer adjustment or adjustment layer, it is, and it shows up independently in the layers panel. It is editable, and it is affecting the smart object beneath it, which is nice. As I said, some things won't work. So I'm going to go ahead and crank this one up like so, make it 108, 109, whatever. And you get the idea. Okay. So I prefer working in this fashion, which is non-destructive. That's my preference. And then if you do want to collapse everything together to be able to transport it over, then this is what I recommend that you do. And we've done this before. And this is what I did with when we created our monster character. is that I'll go ahead and I'll select the top layer here. Here's our mixer, our channel mixer. I'm gonna hold down the Shift key and I'm gonna select a layer copy, make sure that all of this, let's go ahead and even select all of that. There you go. Make sure that it's all selected. Now I'm gonna hit Shift, Option, Command E. And what I should have up here is a flattened version. Let's go ahead and turn everything else off. There you go. Here's a flattened version of what I just created, but I still have all of my editable layers beneath it. And now I can take this layer that I have flattened and I can integrate it with our work in progress over here. So to do that, I'll use the Move tool, click and drag and move it up to that tab. And when the monster appears, click and drag and bring it down below. And it says, do you want to convert colors to a destination document with a color? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that brings it down. And if we want, we can resize it and do whatever we want with that. Okay. And we can, change the color to blue, which is what they wanted, but it really is not important. And the point is to show you, just various ways of adding colors and adding effects to an object to dress it up a bit. Okay. So let me go ahead again. Let me move this up. I don't want the text tool. Command T to transform. And let's go ahead and shrink it down a bit and put it in its place. And then we're going to add our other characters. So this was supposed to be kind of a bluish color. And we can always go back to our original layer and use the channel mixer and change that. If you want to rotate it a little bit, we can do that and, play with it. So those are some of the things that you should be thinking about when you're working with your own project. That, I'm not looking for realism. I'm looking for an interesting concept with your poster. And I'm looking for you to put together all the elements that we've learned up to this point in Photoshop and use them in a creative way. So the next thing that we want to do is we're going to take the faces and we're going to integrate those. Before I do, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to our file here. And on the very top, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. Okay, so here's my new layer. I'm going to bring that at the very top here. And I'm going to use our elliptical marquee tool. And I want to make, hold down the Option key or Alt key on the PC. And I'm going to make my ellipse into which I want to place these people. Now, in order to soften the edge, because by default, if you look at the top and you have your layers panel visible, the feather here is set to 0 pixels. That means it's going to be a crisp edge. I want it to be soft so that it kind of feathers and blends in with the background. So to do that, we're going to really crank this up and make a 50 pixel blend here, or soften it. And you really can't see it here, but you will see it when I paste the image into it. So now I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go back to the faces JPEG. And we can see if we go to the image size, this is really a small image. And then this is in the past, this is something that you just did not do. And I've told you that it's, you need to be careful when you do this. But over the years, they've made some really significant improvements to Photoshop, whereby if you have an image that's a little bit too small and you want to enlarge it, you're welcome to do so. But again, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you have resample turned on. And that what you want to do is you want to, over here, preserve details and enlargement. Okay. That would be the most important thing. And then what you want to do is you want to reduce noise. And I'll leave it at 80, 85%. I can turn it on or turn it off so you can see what happens. So what they're telling us to do, since we have an image that's 3 by 4 inches, 72 pixels per inch, low resolution, which is what you would use for the web. So on the web, it would come out 3 by 4 inches, but for print, it would not, because we're working at between 200 and 300 pixels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to percentage, and that shows that at 100%. Well, I'm going to enlarge this with resample turned on and make it 400%. Now, if I slide back to reduce noise, you can see all of the artifacts and the noise that occurs in here. That's where you're going to get a problem. When you say reduce noise, it softens it, but at the same time, and it takes out that kind of grungy look, but at the same time, it softens it a bit, and it may not be as crisp and as sharp an image as you had originally. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now it's much bigger. It's softened. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say select all. I'm going to come up here to the move tool, and I'm going to copy it. Command C. I'm going to go back into here, into our adjustment layer, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to say edit. And I'm going to say paste special. And I want to say paste into. And it will take that selection and turn it into a layer mask. Okay, and I'm converting. There we go. So there they are. Now you'll notice over here we have the layer of the couple screaming, and we also have a layer mask that's affecting it. If I want, I can resize the mask. And for whatever reason, it's a sharp edge here. So let me go ahead and let's select the mask. And let's go ahead from here and let's select feather. And notice that as I really crank this up, see how it softens? And that's what I wanted. I wanted that to be about 50 pixels. So I'm looking at, in here, I'm looking at this enlarged image. And now what I can do is I can also change it, and I can change it from and add an adjustment layer. If I want to move the mask, I select the mask, and notice how the mask moves and they stay put. I can also resize the mask if I so choose. If I want to move them or I want to resize them, I can do that as well, as long as they're the couple and the layer mask are unlinked. So now if I hit Command T to transform, if I want to make them a little bit smaller in here, I can do so. And then go ahead and click OK. But as soon as I link the two by clicking between them, now when I move one, they both move. When I resize one, they both are resized. Okay. So now what I can do is I can add additional effects to this layer if I want. If I come back up here and I use adjustment layer and I select, for example, black and white, I can do so. But notice, and this is, what happens is that when you apply an adjustment layer, it affects all of the layers beneath it. So if I only want it to affect the layer directly beneath it, I hold down the Option or Alt key. I move in between those two layers and click. And now it's just the two of them that are black and white. So the last thing that they want us to do is, if we want, we can go ahead and we can change the opacity so that they begin to blend. So these are all effects that you can or cannot use. Now, it really depends on what you want to do. So wait, I didn't want to change that. I want that. I want them. There we go. I'm going to change them to 50%. There we go. So they now are kind of ghost-like and appear in the background of our movie poster. And that really is it. We've used less than an hour, a half an hour today in demonstrating this. Next week, we're going to cover digital painting, and I'm going to show you examples of digital painting, because that, after you finish your movie poster in a couple of weeks, that will be your next assignment, is to create a digital painting. I think it's a kind of a fun approach to Photoshop, because it's using it for most cases in a non-traditional way. It has commercial applications as well as fine art applications, if you wish. And I think we have some good examples to show you that I've used in Pinterest, that I've saved in Pinterest, and I have 1 or 2 examples on my website that are useful, and there are some good ones in the textbook as well. So that's our advanced compositing for today. That's all I have. Is there anything that any questions that you guys have before we leave today? No? I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording for a minute. Yeah, so that's it for today. This is a pretty simple lesson, I think. There's some useful tools that you can use, and possibly with some of your movie posters. Remember, with a movie poster assignment, it doesn't have to look realistic. It can be really kind of outlandish. It can be, based on early movie posters, film noir, so that you have, black and white, very stark, contrasty movie posters. They can be posterized so that they're, sharp distinction between shapes and that sort of thing. But remember, what you need to do is you need to also focus on the title of your movie and using appropriate text and the style for it, and spend some time with Photoshop, maybe using some of the filters that are available for that. And you may need drop shadows. You may need maybe try the 3D component, which is covered much later in the textbook. But if you want to give that a try, be my guest. The goal is to have fun with it and learn, and hopefully have a nice portfolio piece when you're done. So if there aren't any questions, that's it for today. And you guys are free to leave, and I will say goodbye. And I'm going to pause my recording, and I'll wait till you guys are gone, and then I will sign off. Okay.